Hey, and welcome back to part 2 of the procrastination series. In part 1, I shared how procrastination isn't because you're lazy or lacking discipline. It actually has an underlying emotional foundation, and I took you through the most common forms. But that still leaves us with the question of how do I actually overcome procrastination? So in this video, I'll share the 2 evidence-based components to eliminating procrastination once and for all.
Hi, I'm Zahrai, and I help professionals to hack their careers, overcome their limiting beliefs, and confidently create the extraordinary life they deserve.
When it comes to procrastination, the first component is about understanding the emotional foundation of your procrastination. Specifically, what is it that you're avoiding? And there are 3 steps here. The very first step is about reframing your internal dialogue. When there's something that you don't want to do, what sort of thoughts do you typically have in your mind? Oh no, I have to do this thing, or I really should finish this task. Language of have to and should are actually extremely demotivating. They're disempowering and they reflect your negative emotional connection with whatever you're procrastinating from. So really simply, start by changing language of I have to or I should to I get to or I want to. It sounds incredibly simple, but that's because it really is. When we change our internal dialogue, it can start to change how we feel about a certain task. We show up differently, we behave differently, and then we think differently. And we've created a self-fulfilling cycle. I can vouch for this one myself. Faisal used to catch me out whenever I'd say, I have to reply to that email, or I have to finish that presentation. And now I've started catching myself out. I will always change my language to, I get to finish that presentation, or I want to reply to that email. I also make sure that when I say it, I actually embody a positive emotion on my face. So I'll actually smile and I'll feel the impact of that because of the biofeedback loop between our face and our brain. Now, the second step is all about self-compassion. And this one is really important because it's so easy to beat yourself up when you procrastinate and reinforce negative internal dialogue. For example, why did I leave this to last minute? I'm useless. This sort of critical, negative self-talk isn't helpful. Instead of self-judgment and self-criticism, you need to be kind to yourself. Forgive yourself for all the times that you've procrastinated in the past, and forgive yourself for all the times you're going to procrastinate in the future, because even though you're watching this video and hopefully taking notes, we all slip off the bandwagon sometimes. It's about having a growth mindset that's open to learning and improving. And then, the final step is seek to understand. This one is possibly the most important of all the steps, because you want to be curious. What is going on for you and why? Ask yourself a series of questions and be really honest and open about the answers. Some questions to ask are, why am I avoiding doing this? Why do I hate this task? What emotion am I running away from? Where is that emotion coming from? It could be due to feelings of inadequacy, or maybe you're a perfectionist, or maybe you're just bored. Whatever it is, this gives you valuable insights about you and what really drives you. Then you want to actually start to self-coach and look to reframe your experiences by asking yourself, how can I see this as an opportunity to grow? How can I find some personal meaning in this? We know from research that when you have a clear sense of purpose, you're far more likely to feel motivated. If the emotional foundation is actually linked to feelings of low self-worth or lack of confidence, how can you remind yourself of your previous achievements? What support can you enlist to help you? Focusing on action can really help you feel more empowered. Okay, so that's the first component that's entirely focused on uncovering the emotional foundation. This second component that I'm going to take you through is equally as important, and it's all about action. The best antidote to procrastination is actually taking action in the face of those negative emotions, because you'll likely realize that it's not nearly as painful as you've painted it out to be in your mind. So I want to take you through 5 science-backed tips. The very first tip is to start small. One of the most common reasons why people put off tasks is because they seem too big and there's no motivation to start. So what you want to do is break down the task into really small chunks. One example is, let's say you have a big goal to run a marathon. You could start by putting your running shoes next to the door on day 1. Then on day 2, you put on your shoes and go for a jog around your block. You progressively increase the task size. Why is this important? Well, when you take action and achieve even a tiny goal, your brain releases dopamine. And this activates the reward pathways, which not only feels amazing, but also makes you want to repeat it again, helping with motivation on the following day. The next tip is focus with a sense of urgency. This is a technique that Professor of Neuroscience at Stanford, Andrew Huberman, spoke about in a podcast. Here's how you want to apply it. Set an alarm for 45 minutes and tell yourself, I'm going to focus now and try to complete as much as I can in this time. This sense of urgency and high intensity can trigger the brain into learning mode, releasing adrenaline and acetylcholine to help with attention, focus, and neuroplasticity. This is also known as the Pomodoro technique, but that technique uses a much shorter time frame of maybe 25 minutes. You can experiment with time frames depending on the task. Maybe you have really strong negative emotions towards it, so you want to keep it to just 10 minutes before assessing how you're feeling and whether you want to continue. That's totally fine too. The principle here is just to start. Now, the third tip is to have some kind of reward for once you complete the task. Positive reinforcement is a really fundamental principle of human behavior. Research has consistently found that a behavior is more likely to happen and continue to happen when it's followed by something enjoyable or rewarding. Now, the reward can be something as simple as a refreshing drink, some downtime with a good book, maybe calling a friend, or even a relaxing stroll to your favorite lookout. It doesn't have to be huge. Now we move on to tip number 4, which is a really simple but important one. Avoid distractions. One of the biggest obstacles when it comes to completing something or focusing is distractions. A notification on your phone, a new email, a call from a friend. Distractions are never more tempting than when you're looking for an excuse not to do something. So first, make it less tempting to default to a distraction. Put the phone away, close your emails, do what you need to do to minimize the risk of distraction. This is actually called stimulus control. But it's not just external distractions that can derail motivation and lead you to procrastination. Sometimes the most powerful and destructive distractions are actually up here in your mind. Worrying about how your presentation will go, becoming flustered at the thought of your performance review or the client sales meeting. Daydreaming about your next holiday, overanalyzing a conversation with your spouse from the morning. So what you want to do is keep a notebook or use the notes function in your phone to keep a distraction list. Here's how it works. When you start to focus on a task, the moment you notice yourself becoming distracted by a thought, a feeling, a memory, or something else in your mind, immediately write it down. Then, bring your attention back to what you were doing. Here is why it's really effective. When you try to ignore thoughts, it's nearly impossible. The distraction list is a really useful tool because it allows you to capture your distractions, give them an outlet by writing them down, and allows you to be able to address them later if needed. Importantly, by getting them out of your head and onto paper or in your phone, you actually will find you'll have more mental clarity to stay focused on what you're doing. It is brilliant for anyone who tends to worry a lot or overthink. In fact, a psychotherapist I know actually calls it a worry book. And tip number 5, establish a routine based on your energy levels. When there's something you're avoiding, you'll generally put it off until you can't any longer. And then what happens is that you've basically expended all of your energy doing everything else to distract yourself so that you have no energy left for the task. This is called ego depletion. What I've always encouraged my clients to do is to map out their energy throughout the day because we all have different energy rhythms. Some people are morning people, others work better in the afternoon. So once you've determined when you have the most energy, this is when you focus on the things that you're procrastinating from. It's so much easier to listen to your internal bodily and emotional cues and do your least preferred tasks when you're feeling the best. So there's a collection of tools and strategies that you can apply to help with your procrastination, starting with exploring the emotional foundation of why you procrastinate first, and then getting stuck into action. I'm Zahrai, and I will see you next time.